Hey everyone, wanted to keep it real. I'm just out here in sort of a park. Looks like I need a shave. Well, I wanted to explore the idea that prophets cannot contradict prophets, nor can anybody speaking by the Spirit of God. I'm going to be releasing translations of the book of John, and these are going to be shocking. But only to those who are cleaving to ideas that align with the abominable church that is spoken of in the Book of Mormon and that John the Revelator had in the Apocalypse. What is really amazing to me is that when I became a Mormon in May of 2023, this was right after I had dedicated, kind of like becoming Jonah spit out of the whale. I answered a call to translate in the best way I can from the knowledge set that I acquired a long time ago in 1994 when I was 14. And so back then, a gymnastics coach of mine introduced me to a Greek professor who gave me 2 of his books, and I don't know why the coach introduced me to him. I was a very passionate Christian, and I guess scholarly somewhat, but not really a real scholar, just loved studying the scriptures. And the coach felt led to introduce me to this guy, and here I am, very young. But the professor, he told me, he said, the Greek language is a picture language, and so it captures so much more than any other language in the way that the grammar works. And at that time, I really hadn't processed a lot of what he was saying. It was quite overwhelming to look at some of the things that he was trying to convey. But I did make a discovery back then, and I didn't know what to do with it because it contradicted all my evangelical beliefs. And this phenomena in psychology is called cognitive dissonance. I know all of you have come across that idea, but cognitive dissonance is very real. And basically, whenever we encounter information that contradicts or is perceived to be contradictory, we find a way to compartmentalize that info, and we find excuses to make ourselves feel the most comfortable with whatever information supports our points of view. And so that's what I did. I saw it and I thought, okay, it's just the way it is, and that's what I'm going to have to deal with the best I can. And I just kept it to myself. But what was remarkable is when I eventually studied D&C and came across section 93 and how it mentions understanding John, and it mentions that truth, the knowledge of the truth, is the knowledge of things as they are, as they were, and as they shall be. And then right under that, it says, whatever is more or less than this is of the spirit of the wicked one. Which, at that time, I hadn't even read the Book of Mormon yet, because I started backwards. I started with Pearl of Great Price, then Doctrine and Covenants, then the Book of Mormon. But then you run across that phrase in the Book of Mormon, and that's kind of a cue. That's sort of a sign to give some insights onto how the Book of Mormon might be trying to convey this idea of the plainness of the truth, past, present, and the future. But what I picked up from that when I read it is that the present's always changing. The past, it's the past right now. So just when I spoke, it just became the past. And so it's, if you really think about it, that verse is talking about the dynamic nature of the past, present, and future as a continuum. And I know this gets into physics, and one might think, oh, surely the scriptures aren't going to force us to think in terms of physics. But why not? If physics is really what's true, then why wouldn't the scriptures be expounding what's true? And so, if you think about the flow of time and how if God is one, but God exists outside of time, and that time is a construct when we're thinking of it in linear terminology, then all of a sudden we have an incredible fresh lens to view D&C 9324. And it's really quite amazing because it provides the test of what is of Satan and what is of the Lamb. And mind you, the Book of Mormon says that the plainness of truth in the Lamb. And what that's forcing us to do is to consider the metaphor of the Lamb. Obviously, Jesus isn't a lamb. So we're not supposed to think of it like the children's Sunday school books are portrayed Jesus. We're supposed to think of the Lamb in terms of the metaphor for the plainness of truth. And I just want to issue this challenge. I challenge you, every time you come across the phrase, whether it's in the Bible, Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, doesn't matter. Every time you see the word lamb, just replace that with plainness of truth. If you do that, it will unfold so many, it'll just rip the veil off so many things. And so, back to this idea of the knowledge of the truth is the knowledge of truth as it is in the present, truth as it is in the past, and the future. And the key there is as is, which is odd, right? Because how would you know? How would you know if you're seeing the truth as is? Well, when it comes to translation, when you know the grammar rules correct, and you're consistent, and that's the problem, is that people are not willing to be consistent when it comes to Hebrew and Greek grammar. But when you're consistent, D&C 93 says, if you are faithful, you will receive the record of John. We think of faith sometimes, faithful in terms of commitment, but I want to challenge that definition because faithful implies being full of faith or consistent with faith. And what is faith? Faith is the assurance of things expected. And so the actual Greek word for faith is pistis. And it's the exact definition that the lectures on faith give, is precisely what the Greek definition of faith is, assurance. And so if it's not something that you can be sure about, it's not faith. And faith is quite scientific. The ground that I'm walking on, I'm only taking steps on this ground because I have faith that it's going to support me, right? I'm holding up my phone because I have faith that my arm and my hand are going to be successfully lifting the phone up. And why do I have this assurance? I have this assurance because every time I've seen similar ground as the one that I walked on now, I have not fallen through a hole. And I have successfully lifted up my phone again and again. And I know the strength that's in my arm. And so for me, taking action with that faith, it's easy. However, let's apply this to spiritual matters. You know, Thomas, he says, I will not believe unless I see the nail prints. And that is an example of someone who is exercising faith, true faith. Joseph Smith, he said to Isaac Galland that the definition of the restored gospel is that it means that you have the right to only accept what is plainly evident to your mind. And that is the consistent theme. That is the theme. So, the Church of the Lamb are a gathering of people who come together, who have assurance, who are only accepting things that are plain. We have the right to reject what isn't. And so, that's the exciting thing about these translation projects that I finally surrendered, because I had over 20 years of pursuing my own ambitions that were getting me nowhere, ignoring the still small voice to translate. But back in the year 2003, I heard the still small voice tell me, but I was too stubborn and I was more concerned with my ambitions in music career to do it. And so back then I discovered that the first chapter of the book of Revelation, it's the word erkatai for behold, he comes in the clouds. That word comes is it means arrive, but it's in the present tense indicative mood. And it says it 2 times, so that's 2 witnesses in that chapter. So when John was writing that chapter, he literally is saying, behold, meaning pay attention, he comes right this second as a fact in the clouds. And when I saw that with my own eyes, it shocked me. Back in 2003, and I had threw my Bible in the garbage can 3 years prior, and then just was curious, you know, something tell me, hey, go and look at that. I looked at it, and it shocked me so much, and I asked, I was like, I have no interest in telling anybody, you know, and I came under judgment because of that, because I was keeping it to just here. And it's a truth that the world deserves to know. And once you can retextualize the framework of Revelation, that the coming was happening then, and it's happening now, then all of a sudden the mists of darkness begin to part. And this raises some bigger questions, and I know you're going to have them. You're going to have these bigger questions. Is that why did Joseph Smith phrase the coming as if it's in the future? And that's where I want to challenge you, because you might think he did, but I have read every single passage in reference to that, and I can promise you the context is it was not about the future. So there you go. There's some things to really dive into, and I wanted to finish that beginning point, which was that truth cannot contradict truth in the past, present, and future, because God is one, and God is the same God yesterday, today, and forever. Meaning that whatever the Holy Spirit spoke through Moses, by the time Jesus was born, anything that Jesus said could not contradict what Moses said, because it's the same exact Holy Spirit existing in the exact same moment of time. And so this puts the standard in place that Joseph Smith, if he really did speak by God's Spirit, could not contradict Jesus or Moses. And if he didn't contradict them, by the time he gets to the King Follett discourse and he says, I am not a fallen prophet like many think, He says, I assure you, I'm not. And then he says these outrageous things that a lot of people nowadays are thinking contradict the Book of Mormon. And I just want to reassure you, I have tested these out. And I will be releasing some writings that prove that not only does the King Follett Discourse not contradict the Book of Mormon, it is very much in harmony with it. But more than that, the Bible, when we see it, the Bible in the Hebrew and Greek, it fully supports what Joseph said in a myriad of ways. And although it's exciting to share, it's also, I'm sad for some people because they're going to have quite a rude awakening. Because my studies, I do my homework, I break everything down, not even just word for word, but every grammatical marker by grammatical marker. And this shows a continuity that is just amazing. A continuity in the Old Testament, New Testament, Doctrine and Covenants. Doctrine and Covenants 93, absolutely supported by John's Gospel all the way through. And man, it's going to be just phenomenal. Can't wait to share.